In December 2019, Chinese officials announced the spread of a virus among their people to the world. Over the next few months, the virus spread to other countries, and the number of cases doubled day in and day out. What exactly happens when a person becomes infected with the coronavirus, and what should we do? A virus is practically just a shell around genetic material and a few proteins, and it is difficult to think of it alive. It can only multiply by entering a cell. The corona can spread through surfaces, but it is not yet clear. The main route of transmission is through respiratory droplets, when people cough, or when you come in contact with a sick person and then rub your hands on your face or eyes and nose. It starts here, and then goes deep into the body, where it can target the intestines, spleen, or lungs, where it can have the most severe effects, and even just a few coronaviruses can cause dangerous conditions. Billions of epithelial cells are covered. These are the border cells in your body that cover your organs and mucosa, which are very likely to be infected. The corona attaches to a specific receptor in the membrane of its victims to inject its own genetic material, and the cell, unaware of what is happening, implements new instructions, which are also very simple. Copy and rebuild. The cell fills with more and more copies of the virus until it reaches a critical point and receives the final command, self-destruct. The cell somehow dissolves and releases new corona particles that are ready to attack more cells. The number of infected cells increases dramatically. After about 10 days, millions of cells in the body become infected, and billions of viruses occupying the lungs. The virus has not done much damage yet, but corona now wants to throw a monster at you. Your own immune system. The immune system, although its job is to protect you, can be very dangerous to you and therefore requires close monitoring. As the immune system invades the lungs to fight the virus, the corona infects and confuses some of them, leaving the cells without ears and eyes, which often communicate through small information proteins called cytokines. Almost all important immune responses are controlled by them, and the corona causes the infected immune cells to overreact and kill. According to corona, the immune system goes into a war frenzy, which causes it to send more troops than it should, which is a waste of resources and damage. Two types of cells in particular cause chaos. First, neutrophils, which specialize in killing things, including our own cells, and when thousands of neutrophils enter, they start pumping out enzymes, and so on. Another type of cell that goes into war madness is T cells, which are usually instructed to infect infected cells, and because they are confused, to cells. Healthy people also order suicide. The more immune cells reach, the more damage they do and the more healthy tissue in the lungs they destroy, and there's a possibility of permanent and irreversible damage to the lungs as a lifelong disability. In most cases, the immune system gradually takes control. It kills infected cells, stops viruses trying to infect new cells, clears the battlefield, and recovery begins. The vast majority of people with coronary heart disease go through it with relatively mild symptoms, but many cases are severe and even worse. The percentage is unknown, because not all cases of coronary heart disease are diagnosed, but it is easy to say that it is much higher than the percentages related to the flu. In more severe cases, millions of epithelial cells die, and as they die, the protective layer of the lungs is destroyed, resulting in alveoli. The small air sacs through which you breathe can be contaminated by bacteria that would not normally cause a major problem. Patients develop lung infections, difficulty breathing or even infertility, and patients need artificial respiration to survive, during which the immune system fights to the best of its ability for several weeks and builds millions of antivirals, but with thousands of bacteria, which multiply rapidly, are defeated. They enter the bloodstream and take control of the body. When this happens, death is very likely. Coronavirus is often compared to the flu, but in reality it is much more dangerous, and although it is difficult to determine the exact rate of death during an epidemic, we know for sure that it is much more contagious and spreads faster than the flu. Imagine two futures for an epidemic like corona. What will happen next depends on the reaction of all of us in the early days of the epidemic. A rapid epidemic starts with a high incidence rate, because no action is taken to slow it down. Health loses the ability to respond. There are insufficient resources such as medical personnel or equipment such as a respirator to help everyone. People die without treatment, and at the same time more health workers become ill. And the treatment, the capacity of the system becomes even less. If this happens, then terrible decisions will have to be made about who will survive and who will not, in which case the death toll rises sharply. What can we do to slow this epidemic? Epidemics can be slow with the right answers, especially in the early stages, so that anyone who becomes ill can receive treatment and not reach the point where hospitals are overcrowded. Make it a social vaccine. And that means the two behaviors of not being infected and not infecting others. It may seem simple, but the best thing you can do is wash your hands. Soap is a really powerful weapon. The coronavirus is surrounded by a layer of fat. Soap breaks down this layer and the virus loses its ability to infect. Also, by licking your hands and washing them mechanically, the viruses are discarded. To do this properly, wash your hands as if you were cutting a very hot pepper. Now you want to put on your eyeglasses. The next case of social distance, which is not a good experience, but you should refrain from hugging and shaking hands. If you can stay home to protect those whose jobs are necessary for the community, from doctors to cashiers, or police officers, you depend on them all and their health depends on you. On a larger scale, quarantine can have many meanings, from travel restrictions to direct orders to stay at home. It takes a vital amount of time, so if you are in quarantine, you need to understand and respect the reason. None of this is easy. But from a larger perspective, the cost is very small. The answer to the question of how epidemics end depends on how they begin. If they start fast and with a steep slope, they have a bad ending. If they start slowly and with a not so steep slope, they have a more acceptable end. And in this day and age, the choice is in our hands.